Hello everyone! So this week I'm going to do a short video just because I feel like a lot of these personality disorders are really well explained in the book, like we can differentiate them. And so I'm just going to briefly go over some key things that I think might be confusing and kind of lay the foundation of what we're looking for with personality disorders. So firstly, we need to define personality, right? Usually we use it to signify an enduring set of traits, right? And I think that's a pretty good definition. Our book uses a uniquely expressed characteristics that influence behaviors, emotions, thoughts, and interactions. So our personality, these different traits that define us, are going to change how we act. They're going to change how we feel and think about different situations, right? Some people may be more aggressive, so they tend to see things in an aggressive or confrontational manner, whereas others may not. So it changes how we look at those scenarios and how we interact with others. And these personality traits that we're going to look at. So personality, think of it as like the grand scheme, and the traits are going to be those different little subsections of our personality. So these are very predictable, flexible characteristics. Like, what's a personality trait? Being agreeable. We're going to talk about ocean. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. That's like the standard that we use in assessing personalities. Well, personality disorders. See, personality disorders is such a funny realm when we get, not funny, haha, but an interesting realm when we get to studying psychological disorders because they occur on a different plane than other psychological disorders. These are on axis 2, and I won't get into that aspect right now. But it's interesting because these are disorders that largely affect other people, not the person who has the disorder. Where we see axis 1 largely affects like those mood disorders, they cause great distress for people. Usually personality disorders, we don't see them causing distress for the person who has it, but rather the people around them who in their social relationships, because personalities are going to be enduring rigid patterns of inner experience and outward behavior that leads to significant problems and psychological pain for self and others, usually more others. But it's kind of looking at, so when does a personality become abnormal? That's kind of what we're questioning in this unit. When does someone's personality become abnormal? We have to look back to chapter 1 when we were discussing abnormal behavior in general, right? What traits do we deem abnormal? And this could potentially change with our society. What we see is acceptable. So this individual with a personality disorder are going to have maladaptive personality traits that are going to lead to deficiencies in their cognition, emotions, social interactions, and impulsivity. And we're going to briefly go through the clusters so you have an understanding of that. But it's usually, we're looking at the deviation from the norm. So when someone has a personality disorder, it's because the disorder is something so different from the one found in their society. So if you have someone who is a narcissist, right? We throw that term around sometimes, who has narcissistic personality disorder. They believe they have claims of grandiosity. They believe they have all of this clout and credit and capabilities to exceed in so many different realms, when in actuality there's no evidence to back that up. That is not something we normally see. I know we may joke around calling people narcissists, but it's very extreme and very rigid. And so sometimes the individual will experience significant distress or impairment, and they're the most difficult psychological disorders to treat. How are you going to treat someone who may not see their personality or who they are as a problem? My phone thought I was talking to it, excuse me. How are you going to treat someone who thinks that their personality, who they are, is wrong, right? They may not even see it. And so these may be comorbid with other. Remember, comorbid just means co-occurring or occurring together with other psychological disorders. And so what you're going to look at as we go through this PowerPoint are the different clusters. And really briefly, we have cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C for personality disorders. These clusters are formed based on their associations. So what characteristics these personality disorders have in common? There are 10 personality disorders we're going to cover. So that's why I'm not going to go over them, because this video would be really long and you all can read the PowerPoint and your textbook. Okay, so cluster A are going to be your odd personality disorders. These are the paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorders. They think in really I hate to use the word odd, but eccentric ways, things that, you know, maybe outside the norm would not be acceptable. Like maybe believing like there is some alien race inhabiting human bodies walking along the earth kind of thing. So it's and they very much believe this. You know, some people may be thinking things like that, but these people very much believe different things like this. And so there's going to be different implications for their social relationships, their behaviors, how they think, for all of these different clusters. Now, cluster B are your dramatic personality disorders. So this includes antisocial, borderline, narcissistic, and histrionic personality disorders. These have a lot to do with the behavior and how people conduct themselves and how that affects their interactions. Antisocial does not mean you like to be alone. It means you have basically like no empathy or understanding of other people. And it's much more in depth than that, but antisocial people tend to use others as a means to an end. Borderline personality disorder is very volatile. It can switch. They think very much in black and white. There's no shades of gray. Very interesting. It's not like dependent. I don't want to use that term. But narcissistic personality disorder are these delusions of grandeur. That's what's going to mark that. So if someone thinks they are wonderful and can do no wrong, even in the face of confronting evidence, that's going to be narcissistic personality disorder. They do not see it. They will always find a way to rationalize their downfalls as not downfalls, right? They will always find a way to prove that they are the best in everything. And histrionic personality disorder is really dramatic, loud reactions. Someone with histrionic personality disorder may walk into a room like, and walk and strut and take their backpack and slam it on the table just to kind of get a rise out of people and gather attention. They may, not necessarily. But histrionic personality disorder gets a bad rap of being called like the drama queen of disorders. That gets a negative connotation. But the point being that emotions are kind of like amplified. And then you have cluster C, where we talk about anxious or fearful behavior. So these are your anxiety type personality disorders, but they do not fall in line with axis 1 mood disorders, anxiety disorders necessarily. These are personality types. So someone with obsessive compulsive disorder, an anxiety disorder, may feel great distress. Someone with obsessive compulsive personality disorder may be super organized and feel like that's just how things should be. Maybe they don't even feel like something's wrong with that situation. So go through this PowerPoint and look at those different personality types, and what you'll see is that I separated into clusters, and I've included videos on each disorder where I could. And so to view that, just click up here, click Slideshow, From Current Slide, and it'll pop up. It won't pop up like this for you. I have 2 screens. Let me switch that. It'll pop up like this, and then you can click the video and it will play. But I've included those videos for everything I could find because I think they were great supporting resources for our text. With that being said, the last thing I do want to address is giving you some pointers for our discussion board. Since not a lot of people watch my video lectures, figure I'll put a little nugget of information in here. So with our discussion board, we're talking about the categorical versus dimensional approach to personality disorders. So why do some theorists want to challenge the way we classify personality disorders? Well, presently we use a categorical approach. We kind of want to place these disorders in different categories based on characteristics people have or don't have. Well, that's it's dichotomous, it's very linear, and it's not really an efficient way to think about these things because people have a range of personality traits. How do we say that someone has an absence of a personality trait? So what a dimensional approach is looking at is how can we see things on a spectrum? We could say someone is very, very low in empathy, right? We're not saying they don't have it at all. We're saying they're very low in empathy. And so if we kind of plot these personality traits on a spectrum, as opposed to saying, do they have it or do they not, we can kind of see the degrees and the variations in our clients that we're assessing and how they relate to the norm. I think that's the best way to explain it, but I'll let you read the text for the rest of that. And so, with that being said, I think that's the last thing. I also included a slide in here for better ways to classify personality disorders, just in case you need a little more guidance with your post. But read through these different disorders, As you'll see, some of them can be a little tricky. That's why I've included videos where possible. That is a video. And make sure you read and finish the discussion board for this week and let me know if you have any questions. I hope y'all have a great one.